All right, welcome back to Bayou Time, and very sad to report to you that one of our longtime heroes in the community, Mr. Al Doyle, has passed away. And Mr. Al Doyle was synonymous with gentleman, good guy, professional. He really instilled in our community a sense of just being a good person. And he, along with Miss Betty Jean Doyle, raised a very successful family. They all did well. And by all accounts, he was very successful at what he did. He came to Houma in 1966. They lived in Mulberry. My parents lived in Mulberry. Everybody got to know everybody, and everybody really just moved along from there. All taking care of neighbors, and dads and moms being neighborhood dads and neighborhood moms. Mr. Al Doyle was a special man, and in 2014, I had a chance to sit down with him, and just a little fact here. In 1982, Mr. Al Doyle incorporated Folse Productions Incorporated right before Nutria Man. So I sat down with Mr. Al on a one-on-one. Let's start our segment off with that. I want you to bring me back to the earliest years that you could remember, because I know you didn't come by way of Terrebonne Parish. You came from another place, so take me way back.
I came to Houma in 1966. Okay. I had graduated from Tulane already. And in fact, I graduated on June the 3rd, and I got married on June the 6th. You know? And then I went to the Army. I was a lieutenant in the Army in El Paso, Texas, Fort Bliss in El Paso for 2 years. Right. I got out, I went back to New Orleans, of course. And then in '66, I moved to Houma. I moved here because the company I was working for, an insurance company, needed a claims office in Houma. So they asked me to come up here and run that office, which I did.
In 1982, you incorporated what is now HTV, Folse Productions. You were the attorney that did my incorporation papers.
Well, I must have did a good job because you did a good job.
You got us legally started, so we do appreciate that.
Thank you.
So you got here in '66, and tell us where Miss Betty Jean came into the picture and everything else from that point. What happened in '66?
Well, like I said, I came here first. Right. She stayed in New Orleans for a year because Brad was just born. You know, Brad, my son. Right. In fact, he's a lawyer now, but he was a baby in Beijing. Let's wait for a year. So I moved here in '66, and I started working as the claims supervisor over here. Then a friend of mine in Morgan City approached me and said, "Al, you ought to go to law school." I was married with 4 kids. Okay, he's this real nice guy. He's still practicing law, as far as I know. Yeah. I said, "Man, I can't afford to go to law school. I got 4 kids. I got to work." He said, "Can you go to night school?" I always got night school. I said, "Yeah, but I can't afford it." Right. So he said, "How much would it take?" So I told him a figure. He said, "Now go to law school." Wow. And I said, I went home, I told Betty Jean, I guess I got to go to law school. I got the money. Of course, I did go on a GI Bill, too. Right. So that helped. And I commuted for 4 years at night from Houma to Loyola.
What do you think he saw in you that made him take that chance on you?
I don't know. We just became good friends. That's all. We just became good friends, and he just said, "You ought to do that." And I really had no future in that. I mean, my dad was in the claims department of another company, right, and he didn't make that much money. Yeah. You know, and so I decided to go take a chance, and I had to quit my job and start practicing law. No clients, you know, nothing, so I hung out a shingle.
What was Miss Betty Jean's reaction when you walked in and said, "Going to law school"?
She went along with it. She said, "Yeah, let's give it a try, and see what happens if you can go for 4 years." And she had to take, of course, I had to study, and Loyola started at about, I guess, 6 or 6:30, and then did not leave out till 10:30. So I didn't get home till 11:30 at night. Right. And so Betty Jean had to take the kids to New Orleans to visit her mother every weekend so I could study.
Yeah, yeah.
And I did, and it worked out all right, I guess. Of course, when I went to Tulane, they had a pretty good football team.
Right. When did you really feel like you were going to enjoy being a lawyer?
Well, because I knew a lot of lawyers, and when the claims department, of course, you meet a lot of lawyers. Right. And they seemed to be very friendly. But the ones I met were really nice and friendly, and I got along good with them. And this guy said, "You ought to go to law school." So I said, "I'll give it a try."
Yeah. It wasn't until years later that either my mom or dad told me that, you know, Mr. Al's an identical twin.
Yes.
And I never knew that.
Is that right?
Until a few years back, you have an identical twin.
Yes, I do have. And in fact, if I would walk out here to come back, you couldn't tell us apart.
Really?
Yeah. Together, you may be able to. But and we had a good time. I think everybody had a twin. We had a good time here in Twin. We had a good time.
Were y'all practical jokers along the way because you could interchange?
Well, my mother used to dress us alike going to school, except we had different color shirt on. Right. I mean, everything else, you know, same type of shirt, but different colors. Right. And my twin brother, he was a smart one. There's no question about that. And so teacher would always call on me to be the dumb one. So we would just change places.
and it worked, huh?
It worked.
What did he become?
He was a civil engineer.
Okay.
My mother wanted all of her sons, I have 3 brothers, to be civil engineers. And mother never went to high school. I said, "Mom, why do you want us all to be civil engineers?" She says, "Let me tell you something, honey. I grew up during the Depression," which she did. He says, "There's another Great Depression. What's going to happen? The government's going to start building things. And who are they going to need? Civil engineers." Yeah. So that's why. What a great man. I could still see him sitting in this studio and doing that interview. And that's what one-on-one's all about. We are remembering Mr. Al Doyle, who, by the way, also was involved with SLECA as their president for many, many years. We continue my conversation that I had with Mr. Al in 2014.
What's been the thing that's kept you in that long?
Mainly the camaraderie which you got other lawyers. You go to, people don't understand that. You go to court and you argue with them, You argue all the time back. But after court, go have a cup of coffee. Have a cup of coffee, you talk about it, and that's good. That's what I tell Betty Jean all the time. She's always arguing. I said, "Betty Jean, don't argue with me. I argue all my life."
Oh, wait till I see Miss Betty Jean.
Yeah,
No, but she saw, or she had enough faith in you early on. Well, 2 things happened that got you in the legal profession. One, somebody else thought enough of you to get you that initial financing, and she thought it enough to say, "I'll take care of the 4 kids we have already."
Oh, yeah, she supported it. She really did. I could not have done it without her. Absolutely not.
So after that, you were on your way.
On my way, Martin, and it's been a good trip. I enjoyed the trip.
Yeah. And of course, y'all raised a big family like most people.
Yeah. We had 5 kids. My daughter, Deb, and the other ones.
Yeah. And Chris, I graduated with Chris.
Chris.
Yeah.
And they all doing good. They all making more money than I did. So.
Yeah. And Bradley's my next door neighbor.
I know.
So when did you start working in the district attorney's office?
Well, it was 2 years after I started practice. I think I started in 1970. Right. And I was 37 years old before I became a lawyer. So
really?
I was old.
Okay.
And 2 years later, Norval approached me and wanted to know whether I wanted to be an assistant DA. Jimmy Gadry was with Norval, and he quit for some reason, whether to run for judge or whatever. Right. And then Norval came to me and asked me whether I wanted to take it. But I said, yeah.
Yeah. And there weren't many ADAs back then.
3. Right. Norval, Jim Alcock, Bill Yates, and myself.
Wow.
That was it, 3 of them. When I first came to Homer, Lafourche and Terrebonne Parish was one judicial district.
Right.
They had 1 DA. And the judges, I think, kind of switched.
Yeah. It seemed like that was something you enjoyed to do.
I did. No, in fact, you're right. I did. When I came to Homer, I loved it. I mean, I still do.
Right.
But New Orleans was not a place to raise children, I thought. And my wife backed me up. Let's go. It's a small town, and we loved it. The people were so friendly to us. I mean,
Yeah.
just so friendly.
So what did you like about the prosecutorial side of the law?
I was in the DA's office for 14 years. Well, I'm excuse 12 years. It was
Right.
12-year term. For 12 years, I knew a lot about criminal law. I knew how the district attorney's office operated, even though the DA switched.
Right,
But you know the operation was going to remain the same.
right,
So then I went to defense work,
yeah.
which it was fun, a lot of fun. You can have a lot of fun on defense work,
Yeah, I bet.
you know.
How did you learn the personalities of the different judges? I guess that's a big part, right?
Yes, yeah, it is. It is. You get to know them. You get to know exactly what the judges are looking for, and then you kind of do it that way.
Yeah. Some of them are tougher than others.
Yeah, oh yeah. Some of them require things, others don't, and some of them just don't like you rambling on instead of getting to the point. You know, let's
Right.
get to the point and say what you got to say.
Right. And on the other hand, some of them will let you ramble on.
That's right.
Yeah.
Some of them let you talk for a long time and really say the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
But most lawyers are fair. I mean, I have never came across, judges, I have never came across a judge who I did not like.
Okay. Good.
And I think they're all fair, they're all fine gentlemen and good judges.
But don't you think that works around the same way that maybe they liked you as an attorney?
Well, I hope they do, Martin.
Yeah.
I hope they do.
I mean, you were a statesman type of attorney. You played by the rules and went in, so I'm sure that there was a mutual respect.
Well, I hope so. But one thing that I'm really proud of about the law, about 2 years ago, the Terrebonne Parish Bar Association awarded me the Elton Dorsey Lifetime Achievement Award.
Right.
And that's another story because I did not want to go to the Bar Association meeting. I'm too old. I didn't want. So Bradley in Beijing talked me into going there. So I went there. I was a real good surprise when Judge Elmer got on that podium
Right.
and started talking about how good this judge was. And I told Beijing, I said, Beijing, there's no lawyer. I know that's good. It doesn't work that way.
And you know, I found out you won that after the award ceremony. I'd have loved to have captured that on tape, but nonetheless, that was one of my questions to ask you today is that really had to mean a lot because it comes from your peers.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It does. And I enjoyed it. In fact, they appreciated me, and I didn't really argue too much in court. I said what I had to say and sat down.
Yeah. You did your homework outside the courtroom.
Well, you have to. You have to be prepared.
Wow, some great statements made from a great man, and he was well liked by so many people. Such a kind man, such a great man for our community, will be sadly missed. But those good days when I had a chance to sit down with him in 2014, part 3 of that interview. When you look back and you put 5 kids through a Catholic school, and a lot of y'all hard-earned money was spent getting them an education, did fate sort of take you through here? You ended up in Terrebonne Parish by a stroke of luck, I guess, and then you stayed. So if you believe in fate, you were supposed to be here, right?
I think God really loves me because He gave me a good life. I enjoyed it, and I still enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I really had it. All my sons are successful. They got a good family. My daughter works for a law firm in New Orleans. She's settled, and it's good to look back.
Yeah.
And I think the only way you can judge the success of your parents to look at the children. Yeah. That's how you can charge them. Yeah. And now I feel I'm better off than my dad was, and I hope my kids will be better off than I was.
Yeah. It's always about making the next generation a little better.
That's right. Maybe one day somebody will get rich in my family.
I got to tell you, what y'all said back in the day, that's the way it was. It was the leave it to Beaver days,
Yeah.
Ozzie and Harriet. So when y'all spoke, it was yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and things have changed a little bit. Have you gone with the flow since things have changed a little bit?
Maybe partially, but yes, I still respect my kids to say yes, sir, and no, sir, and I expect them to tell their elders that way.
Right.
And I expect, and I do expect them to be honest, courteous, and stuff like that.
Old school.
Yeah, from the old school.
Yeah. Where did they come from? Were your parents strict on you, and how?
Well, I wouldn't say strict. They expect us to obey them.
Right.
You see? See, my mom, to be honest, my mother came from a wealthy family. She did. But when she got married, but she expected us to respect them, respect the elders, and to say yes, sir, and no, sir, and obey them.
Right.
And when we didn't, we got paddled. And now what is it, child abuse when you hit your kid?
Right. Things have changed.
Things have changed a lot, I guarantee you.
Yeah, the laws have changed. But how about the Army background? Did that sort of?
Oh, I liked the Army. I really enjoyed it. My wife didn't enjoy it, but I was a captain in the Army when I got out.
Right.
And I was in guided missiles because when I went to ROTC at Tulane, they were a transportation. I guess you graduated, had to go into the transportation end of the military. Well, for the first 2 years, I was in the Air Force ROTC because I wanted to be a pilot. I went to Keesler Field, and I was too tall. And they said, you could be there. I said, no, I'm not. It's a pilot or nothing. So then I quit and got into the Army ROTC. But I couldn't go into the Transportation Corps because I wasn't in it for 4 years.
Right.
I had to enroll in one of the combat end of it, like infantry, armored, artillery, and stuff like that.
Right.
So I said, well, being afraid like I was, I said, I'm going to get into the artillery because they're usually behind the line.
Right.
So I got into it. Luckily, they assigned me to guided missiles in Fort Bliss, Texas. And at that time, that was just the start of the missiles. I mean, that was just, I got on the ground floor. That's why I got promoted quickly. But I was on the ground floor, and the missiles were pretty good at that time, but nothing like today.
Yeah, today it's
Today, it's amazing today.
Yeah. Who was the one attorney that you saw in the courtroom? And I know I'm asking you to pick one. I know there's a lot of qualified ones, but the one person you saw in the courtroom that you knew was going to bring their A game every time they came?
Well, the best criminal lawyer I ever knew was Jim Alcock. Jim knew criminal law backwards and forwards. In fact, he prosecuted Clay Shaw in New Orleans.
Right, right.
So he knew criminal law backwards and forwards.
We got Miss Betty Jean in a room with all your kids, and then I got Norval Rhodes in a room who you work with. I got Doug Greenberg in a room who you work with. I got all your friends that grew up in Mulberry. And I said, all right, y'all got one word to describe Mr. Al Doyle. What's the one word you would hope they would come up with?
I would say friendliness, I would think. Because that's what Brad told me one time. He said, Dad, you know what your trouble is? You like everybody.
Yeah, always friendly.
So I always like that. I do. I like to talk to people, and I do like them.
I appreciate everything you've done throughout the years. You put in a lot of time. I appreciate you incorporating HTV in 19. I think it was February of '82.
Is that right? That was a long time ago, Mom. But you did very well. I guarantee you. I'm proud of you too.
Well, thank you.
I try to consider you and your family friends of mine.
We're going to miss Mr. Al. Matter of fact, never got a bill for that incorporation, so maybe I'll give that bill to charity, something in his name. Our condolences go out to the entire Doyle family, Miss Betty Jean, and all of the daughters and sons, the extended family. Mr. Al Doyle was great for this community. He's going to be missed, but he has a great legacy. It will live on here in the area. So God bless Mr. Al on his new journey in heaven. And don't forget to watch us on Facebook and YouTube, the entire interview. God bless you.